He laughed and tore up my $20,000 gift in front of everyone. But days later, they all came begging at my door, and I just smiled and closed it. Every single time I close my eyes, I can still see his face. The way he laughed with that cruel, smug expression as he tore apart the gift I had spent years of sacrifice to give. My name isn't important right now, but what you need to know is that I grew up feeling like I never truly belonged in my own family. I wasn't the loud, rebellious type who caused trouble or sought attention. I was just different. I thought differently. I felt more deeply. I worked tirelessly, not because I wanted praise, but because I believed in a dream that no one else could see. While my older brother and younger sister were out partying during college, living it up without a care in the world, I was holding down 3 exhausting part-time jobs, attending night classes, and putting every ounce of my energy into building a startup. I lived in a tiny, damp studio apartment where the ceiling leaked in the winter, and my only furniture was a mattress on the floor and a fold-out desk. I survived on microwave ramen and instant coffee. No one in my family ever bothered to ask me how I was doing. Not once. At family dinners, I was treated like I wasn't even there, unless they needed someone to mock. My father was the worst of them all. He'd flash that smug, condescending grin across the table and say things like, "Still playing with that silly little laptop business of yours?" The way he said it, like I was a child pretending to be an adult, cut deeper than he could ever know. But I never let him see the hurt. I swallowed my pride and kept pushing forward. Every hour of sleep I sacrificed, every weekend I worked, every rejection I endured, it all built something greater. I didn't have time for their cruelty. I had a dream to chase. Then, after years of grinding, something incredible happened. My app started to take off. Slowly at first, just a handful of clients. Then more. And then investors took notice. Before I knew it, I was running a growing business, managing a team of 7 talented employees, and signing contracts worth more than I ever thought possible. I was no longer the failure they whispered about behind my back. I was a CEO. I was someone. Even then, I didn't call them. I didn't expect congratulations. Deep down, I knew they didn't care. But some tiny part of me, that wounded inner child who just wanted his father's approval, still hoped. So when my dad's 60th birthday rolled around, I decided to do something big. Not for their applause, but to show them, just once, who I had become. I arrived at the party in a suit that actually fit, driving a Tesla I bought outright. Their reactions were a mix of shock and thinly veiled contempt. My brother snickered and asked if I joined some pyramid scheme. My mom gave me one of those cold, half-hearted hugs, then immediately complained about how long it had been since I visited. My dad? He was already drunk, laughing loudly with his friends in the backyard, a beer in hand and a red flush to his face. Still, I walked up to him, swallowing the bitterness that rose in my throat. I handed him a thick envelope with a gold seal. Inside was a custom certificate of fully paid, all-expenses-covered vacation to Italy. 5-star hotels, luxury tours, first-class flights. A dream trip he had talked about for years but could never afford. I thought foolishly that this might be the moment. The one where he looked at me and said he was proud. He opened the envelope, glanced at the certificate, blinked, and then burst into a fit of cruel, gut-busting laughter. It wasn't just a chuckle. It was the kind of laughter you'd expect from someone watching a comedy skit. He shook the paper in his hand and barked. "You're kidding, right? What the hell is this supposed to be? Monopoly money?" My mom laughed too. My sister rolled her eyes. My brother whispered something about internet scams really paying off. And then, right in front of everyone, my father crumpled the gift into a ball and tore it in half, like it was trash. I stood there, stunned. Not one of them asked if it was real. Not one said thank you. They just mocked me. Again. After all these years. And then, as if that humiliation wasn't enough, my father lit a cigarette, using the torn pieces of the $$20,000 gift as kindling. I watched the ashes fall at his feet, and with them, every last ounce of hope I had for our relationship. I turned around, walked out of the backyard, got into my car, drove away.
No yelling.
No final words, just quiet. And that's how I left my family behind. For good. The days that followed felt like a strange mix of peace and emptiness. I had finally walked away from the people who had spent their lives tearing me down. And yet, there was a hollow space inside me that I didn't expect. I thought there might be rage, or sadness, or even regret. But all I felt was stillness. For the first time in my life, their opinions no longer had power over me. Weeks passed. Not a single call. Not a text. Not even a snide comment on social media. It was as if I'd been erased from their world. Which was ironic, because they had erased me emotionally long ago. I assumed that was the end of it, that they'd move on and forget I ever existed. But I was wrong. Started small. An email from my brother's girlfriend, out of nowhere. She mentioned that my brother was struggling with some unexpected expenses, and that he had told her I might be willing to help with his car payments. I didn't respond. A few days later, my mom sent a long, rambling email about how hard things had been since my dad got laid off from his job. She said they were thinking of selling some furniture just to pay the electric bill. Then came a voicemail from my sister. She was crying, talking about her student loans, about how she had been let go from her job, about how she was living on instant noodles. Her voice was shaky, and she kept saying things like, "We're still family, right?" I didn't answer. I didn't respond to any of them. And just when I thought the storm was passing, it intensified. One afternoon, I looked out my window and saw them. My entire family, standing outside the gate to my house. My mother was crying, clutching her purse like it was the only thing holding her together. My father looked smaller, defeated. His shoulders were slouched. His eyes were sunken. His once smug expression now hollow and gray. My brother and sister looked pale, tired, like they hadn't slept in days. They rang the doorbell twice. I watched them through the camera feed on my phone. They whispered to each other, shuffled their feet, glanced at the door like they were waiting for a verdict. I took a deep breath, walked over, and opened the door just enough for them to see my face. My father opened his mouth, probably ready to spin some sob story. But before a single word could escape his lips, I smiled. Just a small, calm, quiet smile. Then I gently closed the door. No anger, no drama, just closure. I stood there, back against the wall, listening as they walked away. My heart was pounding, but not from fear or sadness. It was from the strength it took to choose myself over them. That moment felt like a turning point, like the final page in a chapter one had spent my whole life trying to rewrite. But life has a way of tossing in one last twist. A week later, I received a letter. Not an email, not a text. A physical envelope with shaky handwriting, my mother's. I stared at it for hours before opening it. Part of me didn't want to, but curiosity, or maybe that old craving for connection, got the better of me. The letter was long, rambling, emotional. She wrote about how sorry she was, about how everything had spiraled out of control. She admitted that she and my father had been fighting about me for years behind closed doors. She claimed that my father had always felt insecure around me, that he saw my quiet, relentless drive as a threat to his sense of control, that watching me succeed, after years of mocking me, made him feel like he was losing his grip on the one son he couldn't break. She said that the house was on the brink of foreclosure, that most of their savings had been lost to gambling and my father's drinking, that my brother had crashed his car while drunk and was being sued, that my sister had been fired and was in danger of losing her apartment. And then, at the bottom of the page, she begged, not for money, not for a bailout, but for forgiveness, for a second chance, for a seat at my table again. She wrote that she missed me, that she regretted everything, that family was supposed to be forever. I read that letter 3 times. Every word was drenched in guilt, but not the kind of guilt you feel when you've truly reflected on your mistakes. No, this was the desperate, clawing guilt of someone who realized they'd lost their last lifeline. It didn't feel like she missed me, felt like she missed what I could do for them. I didn't respond. And then, like a thunderbolt out of nowhere, my aunt called me. She was one of the few family members I had any respect for. She never took sides, never got involved in the pettiness. She kept her distance and watched from afar. So when she called me with urgency in her voice, I knew it was serious. "You need to know something," she said quietly. "Your father, he's telling people that he built your company." I was silent. She continued, "He's been going around bragging to old friends, telling them he invested in you, that he helped you create your business from the ground up. He's even talking to some online blog trying to sell your story, claiming he raised you with old-school tough love, and that you owe your success to his discipline." I sat there, frozen. After years of being treated like a joke, after publicly tearing up a $20,000 gift I gave him, now he was trying to profit off my success? Rewriting history so he could look like the father of the year? That was the final straw. But I didn't explode. I didn't yell. I didn't even confront him. I got organized. I contacted my lawyer, had a cease and desist letter drafted and delivered. I aggressively trademarked my business name, locked down every domain, every social handle, every piece of my public identity. And then I issued a calm, public statement on my business channels, thanking my real supporters, acknowledging my journey, and clarifying that my company had been built without a penny or ounce of support from my immediate family. It wasn't revenge. It was a boundary, etched in stone. A few days later, there was another knock at my door. This time it was just my father. He looked even older now, like life had dragged him across the ground and left him bare. He was holding a small brown paper bag. I didn't open the door, just watched through the glass. From the bag, he pulled out something pathetic and familiar, the torn pieces of that $20,000 gift. He had taped them back together, like some sad peace offering. It looked like a crumpled, failed art project from a guilty child. He pressed it against the glass and whispered, "I was wrong about everything." I said nothing. He added, "I know I don't have a family anymore. I just needed to say it." I still didn't respond. He stood there, silent, for a while longer, then placed the patched-up gift on the ground and walked away. I watched him disappear down the driveway, a hollow shell of the man who once thought mockery was strength. That night, I lit a fire in my fireplace. I took that torn, patched-up certificate, the one that represented years of disrespect, rejection, and heartbreak, and threw it into the flames. I watched it curl, blacken, and turn to ash, and with it, I burned the final thread connecting me to a family that never truly saw me. Because sometimes family isn't blood. Sometimes family is pain you have to bury. And when I closed that door for the final time, I finally felt free. If you felt that, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. We've got more true stories coming that'll shake you to your core.